When Lionel Messi spoke about Lamine Yamal, most people thought he was just being supportive, encouraging, polite, but Messi rarely comments publicly on young players unless something stands out immediately. And what he noticed about Yamal wasn't his dribbling. It wasn't his confidence. It was something much harder to see. Because before most players even become regular starters, Yamal had already debuted for Barcelona at 15 and for Spain at 16. And the strange part is, the thing Messi noticed back then is something people still miss today. But stop, let's go back for a second. Back before the debut, before the headlines, before most fans even knew his name, back when Lamine Yamal was still just another name moving through La Masia. Because signals like this almost never appear on the biggest stage first. They appear earlier. Usually, in small decisions most people never even notice. Inside Barcelona's academy, coaches don't just look at what a player can do with the ball. They look at how early he understands what's happening around him, how quickly he reads pressure, how naturally he adjusts his position, how comfortable he looks when the game speeds up around everyone else. And even at that age, Yamal already looked different in those moments. Not louder, not flashier, just more controlled. He wasn't trying to prove something every time he touched the ball. He was already choosing when to accelerate the play and when to slow it down. And that's a rare instinct at that age, because most young attackers try to show everything they can do as quickly as possible. They rush situations that don't need to be rushed. They attack space before it fully opens. They force decisions instead of waiting for them. But Yamal didn't play like that. He played like someone who already understood that the game isn't about doing more. It's about doing the right thing at the right time. And that's exactly the kind of detail elite players notice first. Because players like Messi don't watch highlights the way fans do. They watch decisions. They watch body orientation before the ball arrives. They watch where someone looks before receiving possession. They watch how long a player waits before committing to an action. And those are the moments where something unusual started showing up in Yamal's game very early. He wasn't reacting to situations. He was preparing for them before they fully developed. Sometimes that shows up in the way a player opens his body before receiving the ball. Sometimes it shows up in the way he pauses instead of rushing forward. Sometimes it shows up in the way defenders hesitate around him even before he moves. Those are small details. But they're the details professionals recognize immediately. And that's usually when people inside a club start understanding what they're really watching. Which is why Yamal's rise inside Barcelona never actually felt sudden to the people closest to the academy. Because by the time fans discovered him, Barcelona already knew what they had. They had already seen how comfortable he looked between lines. They had already seen how naturally he adjusted his positioning in tight spaces. They had already seen how rarely he forced the game when pressure increased around him. And those things matter more than highlights ever do, especially at that age. Because highlights can appear suddenly, understanding almost never does. That takes time, and awareness, and patience. And that's exactly what started appearing in Yamal's game earlier than most people realized. Because when players like Messi recognize something early in a young attacker, it's usually not about technique. Barcelona has always had technical players. It's not about speed either. They've had fast players before. What stands out earlier than anything else is control. Control over tempo, control over space, control over decisions when the game becomes chaotic. And that's the part most people don't notice when they first watch Lamine Yamal. They see the dribbling, they see the confidence, they see how comfortable he looks on the wing. But what really changes how defenders react to him isn't the skill itself. It's the timing of it. He doesn't move when defenders expect him to move. He doesn't release the ball when pressure tells him to release it. He waits just long enough to change the situation around him. And that's a very unusual instinct at his age. Because most young attackers try to escape pressure as quickly as possible. Yamal sometimes does the opposite. He stays inside it. And when a player starts doing that naturally, coaches usually stop asking whether he's talented. They start asking how soon he'll be ready. Which is exactly what started happening inside Barcelona. Long before the headlines, long before the debut, long before most fans even knew his name. And once you start watching Yamal through that lens, something else becomes obvious. He doesn't play like someone discovering the game. He plays like someone organizing it, like someone already comfortable inside its rhythm, like someone who understands when to speed things up and when to slow everything down around him. Most teenagers arrive at this level trying to survive their first touches, trying to play safe, trying not to make mistakes. Yamal doesn't really play like that. He plays like someone who already expects the game to move around him, and defenders start reacting differently to players like that very quickly. Not because of one highlight moment, but because of what keeps happening again and again in small situations most people never even notice. That's usually when coaches stop thinking about development timelines and start thinking about responsibility, about trust, about how early a player can become part of the structure instead of just part of the future. And once that shift happens inside a club like Barcelona, things tend to move faster than people outside expect, because players who understand tempo this early rarely stay background prospects for long. Which is exactly why the most interesting part of Lamine Yamal's story isn't how early he appeared. It's how early he started playing like he already belonged there. And that's usually the signal players like Messi recognize before everyone else does. And the most interesting part is he's still only at the beginning of that story.